From Chicago, this is Bruce DuMont with our Beyond the Beltway analysis of national politics, featuring occasional injections of rumor and innuendo, all offered up by our panel of political insiders, pundits, power brokers, public servants, professors, and most importantly, plain-speaking Americans from coast to coast. Tonight featuring commentary by Tom Korfman of Crane Chicago Business, Carol Felsenthal of Chicago Magazine, Mike Fouché of Aldertrack.com, and Dan Miller of the Heartland Institute. Our program tonight coming to you from our home base at the Museum of Broadcast Communications in Chicago. This is a recorded edition of our program. It's for, by, and about Chicago and the Chicago race for mayor, and a little bit maybe what's happening on the statewide level with the governor as well, and Aaron Schock a little bit later on the broadcast as well. But this is a Chicago show and an Illinois political show. And again, we're going to be talking primarily about the mayor's race. And I want to begin, Tom Korfman, a longtime political reporter and now the assistant managing editor of Crane Chicago Business. There was the first mayoral forum earlier this week. How did you see that playing out, and was one candidate dramatically superior to the other in that encounter?
Well, I think that Chuy Garcia got off to a very rough start. I think the Tribune, in its editorial, said their mind had probably been made up already, but they said they thought the debate was over after the first 15 minutes. And I think that debate performance combined with the very vague financial plan that Garcia has offered has hurt him a little bit in the race.
Dan Miller, do you think that Rahm Emanuel's details have been any more significantly different than what Chuy is presenting?
Yes, I do. I think there is a plan there. Whether you agree with it or not is another matter. But yes, casino. Property tax possibility, at least, to handle the unfunded pension liability part. Those are real problems. Those are real solutions that could, theoretically at least, get Chicago out of the, at least get Chicago on the way to get out of the hole.
Mike Fouché, how did you see the encounter the other night?
Well, Tom's totally right. I think that Chuy Garcia had a lot of problems. I think he warmed up. I think it was really interesting at the end. I think the last question was incredibly enlightening that Greg Hines pointed out in his column, which is that asked, what is your big idea for Chicago? And Garcia said, I want to make the Port of Chicago into an economic engine. And Manuel said, I want to make the Chicago River and Lake one of the most beautiful places in the country. So one wants to make Chicago into a tourism destination, and the other wants to make manufacturing jobs.
Of course, Mr. Emanuel didn't mention that actually that was an idea he stole from the first Mayor Daley.
Right.
Jane Byrne, yeah.
Right. Carol Felsenthal, how did you see the debate the other night, and did anybody stumble horribly?
I thought Chuy Garcia stumbled and then fell and then skinned his knees and broke his nose. I just thought, I watched it on my old-fashioned television set, and I was telling him, trying to coach him through the TV set. When Rahm Emanuel said, I want a city where children can be free to play, blah, 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 Chuy should have said, nobody can sit on their front porch. You sit on your front porch, you risk getting hit by gunfire, and you can be sitting on your sofa in your living room with your grandson eating chocolate ice cream and get hit by gunfire.
Right.
He let so many opportunities
Well,
pass.
I think part of it is, and it gets to, I tweeted afterwards, he should have been more assertive, because what happened was
He's a sweet man.
He let Rahm steamroll over and control the debate. And frankly, I even said I thought Carol should have done a much better job
of controlling
in
Rahm.
controlling him,
Right.
because he was off and rolling. He was filibustering literally every question.
But one thing that I think that comes through is that as much as he got beat up, Carol, and I totally agree with you, is that I think that Garcia comes across as a much more empathic individual,
right?
Which Rahm Emanuel,
But
I don't
too
think
mild.
has.
And the one time,
fine.
that we saw him at his best was on February 24th.
Maybe too
after
mild
the
for you.
runoff
Maybe
was-
too mild for you. But I think that the real issue is not whether or not he's too mild for you. I think is whether or not he's empathic at all. And I think that Rahm Emanuel lacks empathy, especially for people who feel like they've been getting beat up.
Even though you may not like the answer, I thought he answered more questions than Rahm. Ram was giving a speech in
Yeah,
response
he had
to
a lot
every
of talking
question.
points.
He had all of his talking
Ram
points
had
down.
2/3 of the time. And
Easily.
when I interviewed Chewy on Tuesday morning in a conference room in a law firm, and he said that we were talking about a report that came from Huffington Post, not from Chicago reporters, but from Huffington Post, and it was about the CHA sitting on money that's supposed to be spent on housing for poor people, and particularly mostly single women or women-led households that might want 2 or 3 bedrooms for a big family.
Right.
And Chewy was extremely articulate about what's wrong with that. And he said, why didn't this ever come up in the debates? It wasn't asked in this last debate
Why didn't you
or
bring
in
it
debates.
up?
I said, so bring it up. Why didn't you bring it up? And he said,
Whatever he says makes news. I mean, all
Right.
you can-
you don't have to. If you're in a debate situation, you can ask and answer your own
Right,
questions.
right,
Bram, certainly.
right.
No,
And-
here's the problem going forward. I don't think Chewy is all that nice a guy. I think he's misguided. But the point is, he knows he's losing ground big time. He's going to be very nasty, and the people who will be advising him on that are going to be the Chicago Public Schools. That's where
I don't
he's going
agree.
to get
No,
real
I
nasty
don't think that's
in the
right.
next week, Mike.
They don't think they're losing ground. They, in fact, are very confident.
The
that-
polls indicate a huge deficit.
Yeah,
And
but
I
the
think the
polls
polls-
showed him in the
Well, saying-
20s.
let's let Mike respond, and then everybody's going to weigh in on it.
I want everyone to know that I think Dan is a very sweet man. but I mean, the truth is that the Garcia people are very confident. They actually think that Rahm Emanuel has peaked, and they don't believe that the polls are truthful. And I think that there's something to be said about that. I mean, even our own pollster has said, look, 23% of the Chicago population is Latino, and only 15% so far has been the electorate. That's an 8-point difference. And so the question is, how many are going to turn out? And a lot of the people who are most likely to vote for Chewy Garcia are the people who don't have reliable telephone numbers or don't have telephones at all that are listed. So I think that there is a vast underpolled group of people.
That's right, because before the February 24th election, the polls were showing Chewy in the 20s.
Right.
And he ended up,
Right.
at
Everybody was
34?
off.
Wait, hold on.
So
Everybody was off.
And
One of the-
they're going to get the SEIU
That's
and
right.
the CT.
One of the things that from the very
SEIU
beginning, I have
endorsed the
looked
mayor.
at. I've
No.
looked and tried to compare this race to 1983. When I went to Chewy's election victory party during the primary, it was the electricity that I remember from 1983. Again, I haven't seen the momentum grow from that because the momentum from that victory in 1983, you couldn't go anywhere in the city where you felt it. I live in the city. I don't feel the emotional level that's up there. The other thing I'm concerned about is that Harold was able to energize literally 90% or 95% of the black community. They were charged. They wanted to vote. They wanted to change.
Bruce, what does that got to do with Hispanics?
I'm making my point is I don't see the level of enthusiasm or support or even the unanimity of endorsements. I mean, 50% of the major Hispanics in the city are supporting Rahm Emanuel
on the city council.
So
right.
I want to come back and talk about that. And is there what could be done to spark this campaign in the remaining weeks? We're going to pause. We'll be back with more conversation from Chicago. I'm Bruce DuMont. Thanks for joining us tonight on Beyond the Beltway.
Whether it takes 200,000 parts, 800,000 hours of supercomputing time, 3 million lines of code, 40,000 sets of eyes, or 1 million sleepless nights. Whether it's building the world's most advanced satellite, the space station, or the next leap in unmanned systems, at Boeing, one thing never changes: our passion to make it real.
What would happen if energy could come from anything? Or if power could go anywhere? Or if light could seek out the dark? What would happen if it happened? Anything.
Bruce DuMont back. Thanks very much for joining us. Before the break, I had talked about maybe the intensity level in 1983 with African-American voters and Hispanic voters now. And I want to get everybody's reaction. Tom, you were around when that 83 campaign transpired. I mean, does Chuy Garcia need a moment? I referenced before the show, does he need a St. Pascal's moment? And for younger people listening to this show, this was an appearance by Harold Washington on the Northwest Side shortly before the mayor's race in 1983. There were white demonstrators and protesters shouting him down as he went into a Palm Sunday church at St. Pascal's. The video of that was national, and it really energized the national media. They got involved, and it was an emotional spark to the Washington campaign. Does Chuy need something like that to go from where he is to where he needs to be?
I think something like that obviously would help. I don't know, the times are different now, and the racial animosity, I'd like to think, has eased quite a bit. There's no question, though, that a serious episode of any number of kinds, a disaster, a police shooting, something could tip the balance. But, even without that, I mean, Chuy's problem is that, as an old-timer like you might say, I knew Harold Washington, and you're no Harold Washington,
right,
to Mr. Garcia. He's not the polished speaker. He is not the kind of eloquent phrase master that Harold Washington was, and that hurts him a little bit. But what we may see in lieu of a kind of a great moment in the campaign, however, is a resurgence of volunteers with the SEIU and perhaps the teachers union now seeing perhaps this office within grasp, with a pop-up precinct organization that suddenly descends on key parts of the city in favor of Garcia. No one seems to claim that Mr. Emanuel has a great on-the-ground organization.
He has none.
And
Zero.
This is the modern way of campaigning since Jane Byrne. We don't need a precinct captain.
What about the South Side Irish Parade, which was, when was it? Last, I'm getting my weeks mixed up, but it was last Sunday. Chuy Garcia had a fantastic reception at that parade, and both he and Rahm were marching. And Rahm is marching, and people
booed.
are calling out, go back to Wilmette. Show the North Shore roots. Chuy, and to Chuy, there's an enormous amount. These are white Irishmen, and of course, Chuy's not running against traditional Chicago politician. He's running
those
against.
Those are not the people
he's got.
Garcia has got to get blacks. He's got to energize blacks, and frankly, the relationship between Hispanics and blacks is not good. It's not.
I think that's an old story.
No.
It sounds good, an old
Mike,
story.
It sounds good at some social level where, yes, we're all in favor of social
I'm not talking about
programs and
social
entitlement,
stuff. I could
but
care
that
less.
isn't the way it plays out on the street between the average black and the average Hispanic guy.
Go ahead, Mike.
I think that's an old story. I think that the African American community, when I speak to leaders that aren't politicians, what I hear is that there's a lot of exhaustion with people who have been black leaders. And there is a lot of exhaustion with what it is that's in the establishment, which is Rahm Emanuel has come to be that position. And I think that people in the black community are looking for something different.
I think it's also going to be important is that Harold Washington would not have been elected without the huge turnout of African Americans. Obviously, lakefront liberals, which I think have been replaced by labor leaders, the labor movement involved in Chuy's campaign. But the other point is there was a significant slice of Hispanic votes, progressive Hispanic votes, that put Harold Washington in office. I'm interested in seeing the political maturity of the Hispanic community now as to whether or not, or the African American community now, whether they will know that history, remember that history, because they do have the ability to sort of return the favor.
Let me just add one piece.
Because Chuy Garcia was an integral part, along with Luis Gutierrez, of
Luis
inspiring.
Gutierrez, of course, is supporting Rahm.
Let me just add one.
As many of the other elected Hispanics are, because why?
The city clerk guy.
Mendoza.
But why are they doing that?
One piece
because
of,
they won't be the number one Hispanic in the city if Chuy Garcia is elected. Go ahead.
Well, one piece of data, which is that the Ogden and Fry poll last week which showed that Rahm was ahead. When you broke out the data and looked at the majority African American wards, what you found was an enormous undecided percentage. I think it was 38%, which is a really big number. I think that's what's going on in the African American community. And when you look at the individual ward polls that we've been doing for aldermanic races in black wards, the undecided rates have been almost 50%.
Did
Well,
you
and they
see
have
that Meeks came out and endorsed, the Reverend Meeks, I was just reading it when we sat down here, has come out and endorsed Rahm Emanuel.
Yeah, that's
But
no
if
surprise.
If Chewy's people are smart, they should link Meeks immediately and directly to Bruce Rauner,
Yeah.
who is truly considered to be an evil actor in the
I don't think
African-American community.
you have to do that.
On a
Everybody
historical
knows.
note, in 1983, Harold Washington won the primary, the first election, without support from the black political establishment.
Right.
They didn't fall in until the general election, and even we've seen evidence of this in the last election when, the endorsement by the president, probably the most popular politician for African Americans in the city,
In the country,
didn't
yeah.
seem to really help
Is he gonna come
Emmanuel
back?
all that much.
Will he
Oh,
come back
good
again?
Lord.
He'd be foolish to come back.
Well, I think so.
He's going to watch
Chewy
this
may
in
pay-
Hawaii. And his,
Right. Chewy will pay
It's
for
in
him
the
to come
Magnum
back.
PI
house. Yeah.
But again, but again, your point also, Tom, is that if you were an African American leader post the primary in 1983, the pressure from the community, you could not go for anybody else but Harold Washington.
Couldn't be resisted.
That is not likely to be replicated now, just because
Karen-
people don't fear Chewy, and again, for different reasons. Again, different reasons. Susana Mendoza and Luis Gutierrez and other elected Hispanics, they figure, hey, we've got a good thing with this mayor, and why do we want a Hispanic mayor?
But Louis Gutierrez, who has built his career
On being the
and his
first
persona
Hispanic,
on
yeah.
being the immigration reform, and you have Rahm Emanuel, who said when he was in the White House that immigration reform is the third rail of American
But both of-
politics.
both of
It's-
those-
And he and
Yeah.
by the way, Louis used to despise Rahm Emanuel
Oh, sure.
for that reason.
Yeah,
Okay,
for
now,
that.
now
But
for
Louis
political
Gutierrez-
convenience, he's on to the other side.
Luis Gutierrez and Susana Mendoza have their bread buttered on another side.
Absolutely.
And, Susana Mendoza is from Ed Burke's organization, and that's what she's all about.
Right.
And she is a representative of Ed Burke at the heights of Chicago politics. And Luis Gutierrez, he represents the Luis Gutierrez wing.
What can we say, and again, maybe we don't have the right mix to ask this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Blacks traditionally vote in a monolithic way, at least they did in 1983. You have Mexicans and you have Puerto Ricans. There's a lot more Mexicans than Puerto Ricans. They don't, and then throw Cubans and Colombians in there. They generally don't get along with each other very well.
Well, but Chewy's wife is Puerto Rican. That's why I think he ought to
Chewy
put her.
is
Chewy is Mexican.
And I'm just wondering how many people out there who are Puerto Rican, they would frankly would rather have a Caucasian mayor than a Mexican mayor.
And also they have low turnout. Historically, the Hispanic wards are low turnout wards, so he's really, and then you have the question about citizenship too, and people worried about that and still worried about getting deported and punished. But, if what I'm wondering, and I have the feeling based on some news that Karen Lewis is not in good shape. And I think if she were in better shape, she'd be out there, pushing. I think if Karen
But
Lewis
that-
had not gotten this
That
terrible
is-
ailment,
Carol, that is
she
not
would
a
have
plus.
carried it.
That
She would
is
have.
not going to be a plus for Garcia. If anything, that would be even
I
more
don't agree with
incentive for
that.
whites to come out. Karen Lewis, except for white teachers, is a very
That's not
divisive,
true, though.
polarizing,
but a lot
negative
of
force.
I know there are a lot of white parents who have kids in the public schools who despise.
sure there-
Rahm
No, but
and like-
her strength, again, if she was physically stronger,
Yeah.
her strength is primarily with African Americans.
Sure. And for people who are against charter schools, people who are against choice, against competition. I mean,
Tom, is Chewy Garcia doing anything to reach out to the business community at this point, or does he feel that that's just a waste of his time at this moment?
Well, there's been some rumblings of small efforts, but Emmanuel has had the business community in Chicago locked up since the last election.
They're happy with
and
the man.
as evidenced by the campaign contributions. And so I think that, this should Garcia win, is going to be an interesting period of kind of getting to know each other between business leaders and Garcia.
What could he
Sometimes-
offer?
well,
What
sometimes-
could Garcia offer?
But sometimes business people try to be on both sides.
Oh,
and I'm
I-
just wondering whether there's
No doubt there
is there any
contributing.
inkling that maybe some late money is going to come in to at least
He's going out of town looking for it, and it was
going to Los
interesting.
Angeles.
He was in Los Angeles yesterday, and I looked at the list of people who were at, not the Santa Monica private fundraiser, but the one that was in the Disney Hall, and they were stronger on community activist types and people who had been working in the grassroots but were successful enough to put together money to give to Chewy. Not business people. You didn't see the corporate people. Rahm has that locked up, and especially through his brother, he's got all that,
I think the
enormous
big
Hollywood
dollars
money.
are. I think the big dollars, but not necessarily Main Street. I mean, I think LaSalle Street, but I don't know.
Well,
if
look
the,
at
the
this-
store
look at the
owners
first-
also
on
people
Park
that
Street
the
feels that
organization
way.
that you're just talking about. Many of those organizations that are West Coast based, they have units all over the United States. And I think somebody said before, in the weekend before the campaign, there could be literally thousands of people
The
coming in
working
and
families
knocking
party
on
is
doors.
one, right.
And Rahm may not have that. He may be
Yeah.
buying as much ad time
I've been
as he
told.
possibly
I've been
can.
told that groups like Move On and DFA are going around and saying,
Howard Dean will be
"Hey,
out."
kid, rather than going on spring break, you should go to Chicago and be part of something."
We've got to
historic."
break back shortly, and we're going to talk about the Aldermanic races.
Imagine how you would feel if you found $200, $300, or even $2,500. That could really brighten your day. Now imagine if that cash came with something more. Someone truly committed to helping you grow your wealth. Your whole world could light up. The Schwab Investor Reward. Earn up to $2,500 in your account and partner with someone dedicated to help you build a brighter future.
One day, machines will be sprayed to be made. And making something stronger will mean making it lighter. One day, factories will work with the cloud. One day,
DuMont back, a special edition of Beyond the Beltway. Thank you very much for joining us, talking Chicago politics this evening. And around the table, we have people that love to do that. And they are, on my left, rarely on my left.
Very rarely on your left, Bruce. Dan Miller, Heartland Institute, libertarian think tank based in Chicago in its 37th year, I think, almost as old as Beyond the Beltway, Bruce.
Tom Korfman.
I'm the assistant managing editor at Crane Chicago Business, involved in our political coverage. Crane's is the leading source of business news without peer in the city of Chicago.
Carol Felsenthal.
I am a writer for Chicago Magazine, for the print magazine, going back to the early 80s. And I also in the
1980s.
1980s. And I'm also the political blogger, and I also write less frequently for The Hill, but more frequently for Politico, which is a lot of fun.
Mike Boucher.
I'm a publisher of AlderTrack. I'm actually a one-time political consultant who wised up and works in news instead. AlderTrack is a political newsletter that covers soup to nuts every last aspect of the aldermanic races in Chicago.
And there are 19 runoffs. That's the record for the city of Chicago, 19 of them. And before the show, I asked Mike to tick off at least what he thinks are the top 10. And let's
to
go.
choose.
Let's go through this. We're going to look at some of those, starting in the 2nd Ward. Then there's the 10th Ward, the 15th Ward, the 20th, the 21st, and the 29th Ward. And tell us a little bit about the incumbents. In the 2nd Ward, of course, Bob Fioretti was the incumbent. He is
Right.
no longer running. So you have an open seat there. Brian Hopkins against Alex Pattison.
So Brian Hopkins is the former, I guess he's on leave, for a chief of staff for Cook County Commissioner John Daly, who's also the chair of the Finance Commission. And Brian Hopkins is essentially the gatekeeper to the insider's insider, who is John Daly. A very powerful man. Alex Patterson is a one-time fundraiser and congressional staffer for Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky, which is about far away as you can get from John Daly.
And the second ward is largely African American.
It was at one time. Now it's
still is.
Not anymore.
Not at all.
Now it's up on the north side. It was remapped, so it's a collection of all the rich parts of the north side of Chicago, and they remapped it so Bob Fioretti doesn't have a home anymore.
And the West Loop, too.
And a little bit, yeah, a little bit of the no. It's Streeterville and Gold Coast and Old Town and Bucktown and Ukrainian Village.
All right, let's go back to the graphics and again look at the next ward, which is the 20. Fritz, if you'll put the graphic up again. John Pope in the 10th ward.
John Pope is a one-time city worker who was appointed to the job by Richard M. Daley. He's been in there for a while. And Susan Sadlowski Garza is a school counselor at CPS, and the 10th ward is in the far southeast
Is she
side.
related to Ed Sedlowski?
Yes, I think
Yes,
so.
I think that's right. Yes.
Big name. That's a big name in Chicago
Yes.
union politics.
Yes, that's right. So she is from the union stuff.
Tell us where the 15th ward is, because again, I've screwed up with all the new numbers.
The 15th
this
ward.
is Raymond Lopez against Rafael Yanez.
So Ray Lopez is a skycap at Midway Airport, who is also the 15th Ward Democratic Committeeman. That his day job.
So he
is
comes
a
with some
skycap.
baggage.
Don't Shay, take my wife, please. And
Unsubscribe, please.
and Rafael Yanez is a police officer who does community work for the Chicago Police Department. The 15th Ward is part of Back of the Yards, part of Englewood, part of Gage Park. It's on the south side.
And
It's
the
an
next
open seat.
It's an open seat.
It's an open
correct.
seat. Now, the
Right.
next one, again, we go to the 20th ward, and that's Willie Cochran, who's a well-known name. Kevin Bailey is the challenger. Tell us a little bit about that race.
So Willie Cochran is also a former police officer, police sergeant, who's been alderman for some time. He had a very difficult race in 2011 and almost lost, was put into the runoff. Kevin Bailey is a 27-year-old civil engineer, formerly with Union Pacific. He's just a young guy, brand new to politics.
Let's go to the next one, and that is in the 21st ward. That's Howard Brookins, another well-known name. The challenger is Marvin McNeil, and again, Brookins is an incumbent, but again, he's gone to the runoff.
Right. So important to remember, this is Howard Brookins Jr. His dad was a tremendously popular state senator, and Howard Brookins Jr. has had some problems with his chief of staff. Went to jail for a bribery scheme.
Right.
So what's wrong with that?
Right, exactly. Yeah, Chicago. Why not? Marvin McNeil is a relatively unknown who is surging.
That was his
because
defense,
of
as a
this.
matter of fact.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Just Chicago. Good times.
That's why he made it to the runoff, right? All right.
Right.
And then the last word on the far, I think on the far west side.
That's right.
Deborah Graham, a former state representative, and Chris Talaferro. And again, Deborah Graham is she's hung on a lot. I don't know.
She was a
but
state representative for a long time.
But again, Danny Davis and some of the political structure have turned against her. She's not been terribly impressive in the council.
The Carruthers family, which is still very strong in Austin, and his brother too, are against her. Danny Davis is against her. She's having a rough time. And the ward was remapped, so it's not just an African American ward. It's a little bit white, and it goes up in the north. Chris Talaferro is white. And so this is a very interesting matchup.
This African American leadership supporting a white candidate against a candidate who's been undistinguished in her political career, Springfield. or Chicago,
As alderman, she's been undistinguished.
I want to break just for a little while. How much focus is Crane's putting into the qualities of these candidates in the runoffs? Are you focusing a lot on that, Tom?
You know, my colleague Greg Hines has written a couple times about the 43rd Ward. We kind of limit our attention to.
That's where your subscribers are.
Exactly right. It's not too hard to figure out.
Lincoln Park.
And and there's a lot of interest in that ward. Second ward, a little bit. Also, I think pretty good interest for us. You know, these are the kind of power wards. I think to some extent, certainly the most affluent.
Sure. Let's go look into the 30s and 40s as far as wards are concerned. In the 31st ward, Ray Suarez against Millie Santiago, and let's talk a little bit about the 31st ward.
So
and
the
where it is.
31st ward is a storied
Historic.
ward, historic ward.
Tom
It was
Keene.
home of Tom Keene, who was basically the guy who
jail too, right?
went to jail too and set up the plantation wars and all kinds of other stuff, and who learned at the foot of Tom Keene, but Joe Barrios, now our current Cook County board, or Cook County Democratic president, who is
And
the
Miguel
committeeman.
Santiago,
And-
who also went to prison.
That's right. Wow, so many people going to prison. So Ray Suarez is the alderman from the 31st Ward, and his committeeman is none other than Joe Barrios. And Millie Santiago is a former TV reporter for Univision and Telemundo. Very popular.
And where do you see that race at the moment?
It is a complete crazy
close to
toss-up.
Let's go to the next race on the north side or the northwest side, and that is the 36th ward, which used to be a very Italian ward.
Once upon a time,
and,
yeah.
on the far north side.
Yeah.
Bill Banks that
Yeah.
was numerically
It was the
where
Bill
he was.
Banks ward.
How much has that ward changed from the old 36th
Well, it
ward?
was remapped quite a bit, and now it's essentially a Latino ward. And Omar Aquino is a staffer for Congresswoman, oh gosh, I can't remember her name, a suburban Congresswoman. Anyway, he's a staffer for suburban
Kelly?
Congresswoman. No, and he is actually, his campaign is being run by Joe Barrios as executive director for the Cook County Democrats, and the other guy, Gilbert Villegas, is a well-known lobbyist in Springfield
Construction.
for construction.
Hispanic construction guy.
Yes, and
Been around a long time.
he has been endorsed by and is endorsing Chuy Garcia. So that's really turning into a proxy fight.
Okay, let's look the next couple of races we have on the that side going into the 40s. Michelle Smith, which is in the fashionable 43rd ward.
Fashionable.
Caroline Vickery, that's sort of in your bailiwick there, Tom.
It's my neighborhood.
In your neighborhood.
And you see
let me ask you.
no
what do you see?
excitement, no engagement. I walked from my house, which is
polite.
near St. Michael's Church, to Clark Street to have dinner the other night. I counted 2 signs. It's interesting because a lot of the old aldermen, Bill Singer, Edwin Eisendrath, Marty Oberman, they're split in who they're endorsing. So it's an interesting race, but you don't, when I went to vote on February 24th, at an elementary school, LaSalle Elementary School, around the corner from where I live, I was the only one in the gymnasium. There's just, it's, they're certainly Rahm is going to walk
So
away with that award,
hotbed.
but
It's not the hotbed because that
no.
that
The
section
big
used to be a hotbed.
issue is the redevelopment of Children's Memorial Hospital, which is a
Yeah.
huge
And Lincoln
real
Elementary.
estate. Yeah, but particularly the hospital. That's a
And
huge
last but
project.
not least, on the far northwest side, on the border of Niles,
Right.
and that's the home
greatest-
of Superdog.
Yeah, my favorite place. The greatest grudge match of all time, John Arena and John Garrido. They both ran against each other 4 years ago. That went into a runoff.
There's a copper, right?
Garrido's a cop, and that's big cop area up there. Lots of police and firefighters are up there, and they're all behind John Garrido. When we polled right before the election, they were tied 38-38. So I think it's going to be a tough race.
In the again, there are 9 more. We'll talk about that the next time we get together. But in those 10 races, is it evenly split? People who have publicly supported either Rahm or Chuy, or are they trying to stay away from making a decision? And how much money has Rahm put in? I assume that Chuy isn't putting money into aldermanic races.
Chuy's putting bodies in, and he's got organizers in a lot of these races, and they're sharing campaign offices. For instance, Yenyes in the 15th is a big one, and Gilbert Villegas as well in 36. But for the most part, there's very little money that's going in, and most of the candidates are staying neutral.
But you have to talk about Chicago Forward, which is, I think, a big factor in both
Yep.
the mayoral race and the aldermanic race. And when I interviewed
That's Rahm's.
That's Rahm, supposedly not connected
His
to, but
independent
run
expenditure
by,
PAC. Right.
It's
run by somebody who's
allegedly
very
with no
close to him.
connections.
Yeah, allegedly. And
That would be wrong. That would be illegal.
Chicago Forward put money into the 32nd Ward race, which is Scott Wagasback, and he won with 79% of the vote.
Yeah.
And they put money in for Michelle Smith. She couldn't
Right.
avoid a runoff. And put money into the other race that's really interesting to me, and I'm not sure what's happening. It is the Deb Mell race.
Right.
Is there a recount going on? Is that guy still
Here
running?
for that. We're going to hear
Not
from
yet.
that when we come back. I'm Bruce Dumont. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Your business requires on-time payroll processing, affordable health benefits, workers' compliance, and force optimization is a suite of HR services that takes care of all of this and more. helping your company run better, grow faster, and make more money. It's
When you run a business, you get to build something much better than a resume. You get to create value that didn't exist before. And then you get to see even more possibilities. At MB Financial Bank, we know why you work. MB means business.
Bruce DuMont back in Chicago, and during the break, Mike, you made an interesting point about spring break. That spring break will have some impact on this election.
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of things that are going on. The first is that all the teachers are going to be off. So they're already starting training programs for the teachers in order to get them on the street for the weeks leading up, especially the weekend before. Yeah, they're all going to wear red T-shirts. That's right. And then the other is that who are the people who are going to go on spring break trips? People with
wealthy
money.
people.
Yeah, wealthy people. And so wealthy people are probably going to be more likely to be out of town for election day.
And they take their kids on college tours.
Right. And so that's going to, those are ROM voters.
But some wealthy people are also well educated. Some.
What?
So they know how to vote. Yeah.
So
talking about
Rahm
you, Dan.
Emanuel has sent probably everybody at this table the ability to vote by
early.
mail.
Yes.
And also early voting. And by the way, early voting starts tomorrow in the city of Chicago. It's going to run through the 29th. Yeah. And actually, where we do this program, the Museum of Broadcast Communications, literally about 30 feet from where I'm sitting right now, is the voting for the.
I early voted here last time,
That's
right
right.
before a show. It was
Thousands
great.
of people do, or probably maybe
awesome.
hundreds, but
It was great.
I don't know if it's going to be thousands.
I endorse it.
You were making a point about Michelle Smith.
Mike mentioned about how most of the candidates are staying neutral in terms of the mayor's race, the aldermanic candidates. Michelle Smith is the exception to that.
Right.
Certainly has embraced, Emmanuel has endorsed her, and she has certainly embraced the mayor, and he did very well last time in 2011 and also in February. That's a key ward for him. I wonder to Mike whether or not with the runoffs in these wards, are there enough runoffs to help overall the turnout, or is it the number so small that we won't see much of a lift?
No, I think so. And I think that is a big part of the Chuy Garcia United Working Families game. I mean, they've been building operations in these places. I think the 10th Ward, 37th Ward, 36, 15, 16, I think that you're going to see huge organizations pushing people out.
But if you mentioned Chicago Forward as a financial power in the aldermanic races, but although Chuy has not contributed to aldermanic candidates, the unions that are backing him are working in those races very strongly, counteracting some of that.
And there is no firewall in between those organizations. I mean, people get it. You know, if you're getting the union support, you're going to probably be with Chuy too. The unions are letting people know that.
But you talked about in the 45th Ward, you said there's obviously a lot of police and firemen, living in that part of the city, just inside Sauganash. But I guess my question would be, in one of those races, the union is very much involved in that race.
Yes.
But if police and firemen turn out to vote in their aldermanic race, and one of the candidates is a Chicago police officer, are they going to be for Chuy because of their dislike for Rahm? In other words, these would be Caucasian voters.
Yeah. That's
many
a real,
who are maybe Republicans.
That's a real 6 of one, half a dozen of another question, because there's a real issue with pensions. And cops and firefighters are very aware that Rahm Emanuel is probably going to cut their pensions. And they think about that hard, and I think that is a real reason why we haven't seen a big endorsement from the police union.
I'd be more concerned about the class warfare scenario that seems to be emerging at this table if the undecided vote were as large as it was in the major in the first primary election.
Almost 66%.
But in fact, it's gone down and down and down. And Mike, you correctly predicted early on, because of that high undecided, that there would be a runoff, and you were exactly right. That undecided voter has disappeared pretty much. It's at very low levels now.
No, it's 12%, something like 12%. I think
far below what it was in the general election.
I don't believe the polls. including the ones that we've run. And, I mean, oh, seriously. And I talk about it with our pollster, and we put it in, and we said, this is what we think is that a poll is a match in a dark room. It's the best light that you have. And when we look at it, we think, this is the best information you have, and it's limited. And I think that's how we ought to be thinking about it.
Well, between now and Election Day, there's so much, obviously, that can happen. And as you say, there could be an incident, there could be another, another tragic shooting.
What about Tony Preckwinkle?
And Tony
Preckwinkle is I asked Chewy about her. He's her floor leader. She hasn't issued endorsement. She obviously has shown her dislike for Rahm Emanuel. She could have run for mayor and done very well. He said he's hoping that she comes up with an endorsement. My guess would be that she's going to stay out.
You think that would change?
No, I think she'll stay out.
Is there any other magic endorsement? I think, doesn't everybody agree that
Bob Fioretti?
The president isn't going to come back and do anything, is he?
No.
I mean,
Chewy would love to see him come back, I'm sure.
Right.
Maybe Bibi Netanyahu.
Is there any other endorsement out there that really would mean anything to anybody? I mean, the downtown newspapers. They're all supportive of Rahm.
Right.
Is there anything out there that could help either candidate that you think would push this thing over the top?
Have you got something in mind?
No, I don't.
Well, I think Preckwinkle would be big, and I think Bob Fioretti could be helpful.
Why is Fioretti still on the sidelines in your
he said something very negative about Chewy to the New York Times, called him a flip-flopper, you can't trust him. But on election night, he said he was going to vote for anybody but Rahm. So he's done his own flip.
I don't think that Fioretti would have much influence with anyone anymore. I think he's just a disgruntled, he might be just a disgruntled over the fact that he seemed to be the front runner to be backed by the CTU, and clearly, whatever the criteria was in the audition to the teachers union, he didn't. But he has
quick question for everybody. According to the recent polls, and again, they will change by the time we get together next time, there's about a 15-point spread right at the moment. Does anyone think that this race is completely over at this moment in time?
Oh, no.
Yes, I believe Rahm's
Dan
got
Miller
it.
thinks it's over.
I don't think it's over. I think it's very much
I think
in
Emanuel
progress.
is in a very strong position, but I don't think the race is over.
Mike?
Total close race.
I agree with that. Our thanks to all of our guests this evening, Dan Miller, Carol Felsenthal, Tom Korfman, and Mike Fouché. Thank you very much for being with us. This is a special edition covering just Chicago politics. It's great to do that. Hopefully you will all be back at least once or twice between the time everybody goes to the polls on April 7th, unless you're going to vote early. And if you live in the downtown area, come on down and see us at the Museum of Broadcast Communications. I'm Bruce DuMont. We'll see you next week.